Mother's Day in the United States began in 1905 with the celebration of one mother. Who was she? What did she do? 9 years later, it became a national holiday in our country. 9 years of active letter writing and event coordination before it was signed by the President as a national holiday. My name is Martina Mathisen. I've collected stories for you this Mother's Day. Stories to celebrate you, to celebrate mothers everywhere. And the story of that first Mother's Day and how Mother's Day came to be. It's a fun way to learn about history. Real people doing real things. Daring, loving, kind mothers. Our world is filled with them. Today, as we celebrate you this Mother's Day, you'll meet a few of these amazing, wonderful mothers. How did Mother's Day actually begin? It's a fascinating story, and not the same as other countries around the world. Today, you'll learn about that a little bit later. There once was a woman named Anna Jarvis, a woman who loved her dear children as she loved humanity. She had 11 children. Only 4 survived to adulthood. Despite the tragedy, or maybe because of it, she dedicated her life to helping others. Helping someone else can be the very best remedy to our own sadness. Anna Jarvis started what she called Mothers' Work Clubs in Virginia. They raised money for medicine. They hired women to help families where the mothers had tuberculosis. They inspected bottled milk and food. So significant was this work that doctors wanted these work clubs in other towns. The clubs spread. This was at the time of the Civil War. When the war raged, Anna Jarvis insisted that her clubs were neutral and would provide help and aid to whomever needed it. She would treat and feed soldiers no matter what uniform they wore. After the war, with so many broken-hearted mothers on both sides, Anne thought it would be mothers to help heal the country, help unite the country again. We are the United States, she thought. Anna Jarvis knew mothers would lead by example. She organized Mother Friendship Day at the courthouse in Prentytown, Virginia, to bring together soldiers and neighbors, everyone from all political sides, for Friendship Day. There was a great worry that the event would erupt into violence after so many years of deep hatred on both sides. What would happen when these opposing sides came together in one place? Would there be more bloodshed? Would so many getting together cause new fighting? Anna Jarvis greeted each person to the event with such gracious, open kindness that the others stood at the side, watching and waiting for the first signs of a struggle. Finally, a tall man standing behind his careworn mother extended his hand in friendship. The shake was returned. Like a long-awaited reunion, handshakes and hugs, smiles, laughter even, and pies were shared by everyone. It was a huge success, a great success. Mother's Friendship Day was indeed healing and became an annual event for several years. Anna Jarvis spent her life showing and spreading love and friendship. Anna Jarvis gave a lecture here in 1876 at this church and prayed that someday someone would create a national day to celebrate mothers for all they do. Anne's 12-year-old daughter, Anna, was there that day, all dressed up, listening to her mother. Anna never forgot her mother's prayer. When her mother died in 1905, Anna, then in her 40s, promised at the gravesite of her mother that she, the daughter, would be the one to answer that prayer. Anna Jarvis, with a name so similar to her mother's, began a relentless letter-writing campaign to convince governors of every state in the Union to declare the second Sunday of May Mother's Day. She tirelessly wrote to anyone she thought would have influence, including Mark Twain, all the way up to President Theodore Roosevelt himself. She sought the help of the powerful Mr. Wanamaker, a Philadelphia businessman and a friend. He obliged. The first Mother's Day service was held on a sunny spring morning in 1908 here at St. Andrew's Methodist Church in Grafton, Virginia, where Anna's mother taught Sunday school for 25 years. Anna brought 500 carnations, her mother's favorite flower, for the service. An even bigger celebration was held that afternoon at Wanamaker's auditorium, where her mother once spoke. Mother's Day had begun. 2 years later, West Virginia passed a law making Mother's Day a legal holiday. And finally, in 1914, President Woodrow Wilson declared Mother's Day an official holiday. Do you think Anna, satisfied, enjoyed a nice cup of tea, remembering her mother, and knowing that all states in the United States would celebrate Mother's Day? No. She redoubled her letter-writing efforts. She wrote letters and more letters. She had so much correspondence. She bought a little house to act as her office. She overwhelmed herself with the desire to be the mother of Mother's Day. She trademarked the phrase Mother's Day, as well as second Sunday in May. She decided not only that every state should have a legal Mother's Day, but she decided that everyone should write a letter to their mother. Not everyone was inclined or liked their own handwriting or satisfied with their own written sentiments. They liked cards, pretty cards, with pretty loving words for mother. The thought of a store-bought card was an elegant treat to many. The card companies were happy and provided lots. This infuriated Anna. She did not want people to sign cards. She said it was lazy. One day, her friend and supporter, Mr. Wanamaker, invited her to lunch. He had her served a special salad called Mother's Day salad. She accepted it, and taking the plate in her two hands, stood up, turned the plate over, and dumped the salad on the floor and stormed out. She didn't like the name Mother's Day salad. He was commercializing Mother's Day, she thought. Mr. Wanamaker thought he was honoring mothers. Anna Jarvis was just mad at everyone, it seemed, threatening even to sue New York Governor Al Smith over a Mother's Day meeting in 1923 because she was not involved. She fought with the then New York First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt over a rival Mother's Day committee. Anna Jarvis developed such disdain for anyone doing anything in the name of Mother's Day. She spent furious years railing against flower shops owners, card makers, and the candy industry for profiting with the holiday. She issued a news release that said, "What will you do to rout charlatans, bandits, pirates, racketeers, kidnappers, and other termites that would undermine with their greed one of the finest, noblest, and truest movements and celebrations?" She didn't understand that people just wanted to love and honor their mothers with cards and candy. Anna incorporated herself as Mother's Day International Association, although it's unclear if she ever had any members. The more popular the day became, the more furious Anna Jarvis came, until she spent the rest of her days fighting the legal day, Mother's Day, ending her time on this earth at a sanatorium broke, having spent all of her money first being a champion for the day and then fighting for the end of it. In the end, She literally had no money left. Ironically, candy makers and card makers helped pay her sanatorium bills. And that, my dears, was the beginning of Mother's Day. Now, one big question remains about Mother's Day. How do you spell it? You've seen it like this, with an apostrophe S, the day belonging to mother, and you've seen it like this, with a plural S, all mothers, many Mother's Day. Which is correct? What do you think? I would like you to take a minute to decide. You didn't know there would be a quiz here today. Well, on which side will your decision be placed? With the apostrophe S or with the plural S? Anna Jarvis specifically noted in 1912 that mothers should be singular possessive, for each family to honor its own mother, not plural for all the mothers in the world. U.S. President Woodrow Wilson, in his presidential proclamation of Mother's Day, and other U.S. presidents too, use the apostrophe S on Mother's Day. And now you know, and now you can use it too. In the UK, originally, the day had nothing to do with mothers. It was the day for Christians to visit their mother church. Domestic servants were given the day off to return to their hometown to worship with their families at their mother church. Our Mother's Day is always the second Sunday in May, while in the UK it changes every year because it's linked to the calendar, usually falling in late March or early April. Mothering Sunday is traditionally known, and it's celebrated the fourth Sunday of Lent, which is 3 weeks before Easter. Today, many countries around the world have adopted the second Sunday, like us, for their own Mother's Day celebrations. Let's talk about some great mothers. Mothers from history and mothers from today. Let's skip through time and go around the globe. We'll talk about mothers that you have heard of. We'll learn a little bit about them. And we'll talk about mothers you may not have heard of and learn something about them too. Today is a day to remember, to honor, to commemorate motherhood itself. One of my very favorite quotes is, "The hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world." The influence of a mother cannot be overstated. Do you know this woman? Mrs. King, Alberta King, mother of Martin Luther King Jr. Alberta Williams King would fill the air of her church with beautifully played organ music. She seemed tireless in the community, founding the choir at Atlanta's Ebenezer Baptist Church. She was also involved with women's groups, reaching out and connecting with women, mother, people in her community. She worked with the NAACP and the YMCA. Although she felt her most important work was in her own home with her own precious children. Alberta King was determined to raise her 3 children with a healthy sense of self-respect. She taught them that the segregation they saw every day was a social condition rather than a natural order. Martin Luther King wrote in his autobiography, "She made it clear that she opposed this system and that I must never allow it to make me feel inferior." At this time, Mother had no idea the little boy in her arms would years later be involved in a struggle against the system she was speaking of. In 1974, 6 years after her son was assassinated in Memphis, Alberta King was shot and killed by a madman while she sat at her organ at her church. Her ideas remain alive and important, not only as they were to her son, but to everyone. Her involvement in community showed her children the meaning of her ideas through the reality of her actions. She reminds us all to live and do what we believe. Now this woman did not believe in something. She did not believe it with all her heart. She did not believe that her littlest boy, Al, was addled, which was to say then, in those days, mentally ill. She believed in her son and his intellect and would not give up on him. Nancy then had no confidence in the school. She had confidence in her son. She promptly took him out of school and brought Al home to teach him herself. Yes, she did. Thomas Albert Edison called Al, then the youngest of her 7 children, flourished by exploring, reading, trying, testing the world as his mother presented it to him. Thomas Edison said of his mother, "My mother was the making of me. She was so true, so sure of me. I felt I had something to live for." Thomas Edison may have been dyslexic in a time before that learning disorder was studied or understood. There are plenty of stories about Nancy Edison, most of them likely exaggerated, some by Hollywood and the movies. But what is true is she loved her son. She never stopped believing in him and sharing that belief with Thomas Edison himself as he grew into a prominent inventor and businessman. Nancy Edison died when Tom Edison was just 24 years old, remaining his source of inspiration throughout his life. Nancy believed in her son, helping him to have belief in himself. That's what a mother can do, believe. And when she needs to, not believe. A mother is the only person on earth who can divide her love among all her children, and yet each child still has all her love. Moms are just good that way with math. Sometimes moms are good at helping us with decisions. Sometimes. There was a 24-year-old young man who ran up to the attic of the state capitol building in Tennessee. Some say he crept onto the 3rd floor ledge, pressing himself against the bricks, trying to hide from the angry mob that wanted to tear him limb from limb. Did his mother save him? No, actually, it was she that got him into the tight spot in the first place. You see, this handsome young man was Harry Byrne. He was the youngest member of the state legislature in Tennessee, and a sharp dresser, too. He wore a red rose pinned to his lapel on August 18th, 1920, to show his opposition to the proposed 19th Amendment, which would allow women the vote. The red rose told people that he opposed the vote for women. Many men thought that if women voted, it would be the same thing as giving a married man 2 votes, because surely a woman would vote with her husband no matter what she thought. And as some doubted she even had a thought in her own head to begin with. By this summer in 1920, 35 states had ratified the measure, bringing it 1 state short of 36. 36 were required, and in this day, there were 35. It was a special session of the state Congress. The crowd was tense as the vote call began. Harry Byrne stood up, opened his mouth with a red rose still pinned to his lapel, and voted aye, so quickly that it took his fellow legislators a minute to register what he just said. They were slack-jawed. What? They didn't even know what happened. They were just blinking slowly. And then pandemonium broke out. That's when Harry had to run up to the attic to hide. Harry Byrne couldn't go anywhere for months without a bodyguard. What his constituents didn't know, what they couldn't know, is that when he stood with one hand in his pocket, that hand was gripping a letter from his mother, Phoebe Byrne, Miss Phoebe as her friends called her, an intelligent, well-spoken, college-educated, amazing mother that ran the family farm successfully after the passing of her husband. She had illiterate, uninformed male tenants on the farm that could vote, while she could not. Miss Phoebe wrote her dear son a sweet little 7-page letter filled with the latest news from home, news from the farm and the family, and then she told her son in writing, "Be a good boy and vote for suffrage." At the last moment, he listened to his mother's words, trusting her. Years later, he explained his thought that if his well-read, thoughtful mother could not cast a vote, while drunk, illiterate men could, that was a great injustice, an injustice he could not stand by to witness. The letter meant a great deal to Harry Byrne, as did his mother, as it turned out, to all of us. Because it was then decided on August 19th, 1920, women in the United States of America have the right to vote. Phoebe Byrne, a mother who cared, who had an opinion, and who connected with her son. Oh, the daring mothers of history. Daring to dance. Daring to entertain, daring to dance the Charleston with her stockings rolled down to her knees like Josephine Baker, a daring, expressive entertainer making a huge and successful career for herself on stage, thrilling audiences, causing traffic jams in the theater district in New York, while being a mother to 12 adopted children, daring to believe she could. Daring mothers doing what women do, and daring to do what some thought women could not do, like fly an airplane across the Atlantic alone, while still loving, supporting, and giving special flying trips to her 2 stepchildren, like Amelia Earhart did. Oh, the daring mothers of history. This woman, known by her nickname of the Flying Housewife, Fanny Blankers-Koen, a Dutch athlete who had to push past naysayers that told her, "You can't be a mother and an athlete." Oh, she thought, you can't? Interesting. As she won 4 gold medals at the 1948 Summer Games in London. She had 2 kids and was 30 years old at the time. She was hated by some expressive people to such a degree that after her first 2 golds, she thought she should just go home. But after a conversation with her husband, who was also her coach, she continued and won 2 more golds. Her husband could not know how tough it was on her to be called a bad mom. He also may not have known at the time that she was pregnant. Yes, not advised currently. Fanny and her husband both were thrilled that she was the first woman to win 4 golds at a single game. Fanny Blankers-Koen, the most successful athlete at that event, and the woman who helped eliminate the belief that age and motherhood were barriers to success in women's sport. These mothers believed you can be you and a mom too. Great mothers doing great things and sometimes secret things. Eliza Van Loo had splendid parties, an award-winning garden, a most fashionable woman of the Old South, presiding elegantly over her mansion on Church Hill in Richmond, Virginia, sipping tea with friends Eliza was so admired that everyone, just everyone, wanted to be invited to her parties. Being on her invitation list was a social necessity in Richmond. People loved to chat about her last advent as much as they liked to chat about the next one. And everyone who was anyone just kind of overlooked her odd spinster daughter, Elizabeth. Oh yes, they pitied the lovely mother, Eliza, to have an addled daughter like Elizabeth, who would walk around muttering to herself, openly bad-mouthing the Confederacy while they were in the South, clearly out of her mind. Poor thing, people thought, and ignored her. The citizens of Richmond would smile and just look the other way around Elizabeth. In reality, Elizabeth was a brilliant young woman who was pretending to be a blithering idiot so no one would suspect she was running the Union's most important spy ring with the crucial help of her socialite mother, Eliza, who shared her daughter's beliefs. Elizabeth kept up the ruse and stayed as an innocent, while her mother Eliza kept up appearances and remained a social elite. Together, they both ministered to wounded Confederate soldiers, partly out of charity, but also to prevent suspicion. They used their own money to provide food, clothing, books, and medicine to wounded as a charity. And then in return, prisoners gave Elizabeth military information which was delivered to top Union generals. Mother and daughter worked to hide Union soldiers, Confederate deserters, and even once a horse. Mother and daughter, they freed slaves, yet no one knew. Only after the war did Richmond realize the two of North's most important allies had been sipping tea on Church Hill in a very lovely garden. Daring. Now, let's take a little break. We'll take a little brain builder. I want to give you a quiz. Are you ready? What do you think is the first sound a baby can vocalize? The first sound a baby can make is ma, which is why in almost every language around the world, the word for mother begins with an M or some iteration of the ma sound. A mother's voice is more than comfort for a baby. And it's not just the past we find great mothers. Dr. Dana Susskind is a mother of 3 and a pediatric surgeon at the University of Chicago who specializes in early childhood development. Dr. Dana Susskind knows the value of speaking to a child from the very beginning of life for brain development. Children who cannot hear words miss this development. But it's not just hearing impaired children. All children must hear language. From birth to 3 is so very important to brain development. Dr. Dana Susskind, after discovering so many children were missing out on this opportunity for development, she founded the 30 Million Word Project to help mothers understand the vital importance of speaking to a child, to help the moms let go of the notion that learning begins at school age. Dr. Dana wants the goal to be for a child to hear 30 million words before they're 3 years old. Does that sound like a lot? Not really. When a mom engages with her baby, talks and reads, that's how many words they hear before 3 years old. She teaches not just the value of talking, but how to do that with children. Dr. Dana Susskind wants to reach out and help children by guiding mothers even through her own personal tragedy. Her husband, Don Liu, the Surgeon-in-Chief at the University of Chicago, drowned while attempting to rescue 2 children caught in a strong current in Lake Michigan. Her love for children of the world so great, the project stayed alive through her grief and today continues to help children get the best start in life they can by being talked to. A mother's love, helping mothers communicate to their babies. You see, it's just not great mothers of history we can learn from. Great mothers just keep on being great throughout our time, today included. Meet a Malawian chieftain, Teresa Kachindamoto. She presides over 900,000 Malawians. Her nickname is the Terminator, not just because she likes to say, "I'll be back." It's because she has terminated more than 1,000 marriages with child brides. So girls can go back to school and have a chance of a future. In this country, with one of the highest rates of child marriages in the world, where 50% of the young women get married before turning 18, Teresa Kachindamoto saw girls 12, 13, and 14 having babies, having 2 children by that age, and simply said, no, they're too young. Some traditional people said, what does she know? She herself is a mother to 5 boys. She knows. Nothing deterred her. Teresa Kachindamoto says, if you educate a girl, you educate the whole area. Let the girls and boys go to school and then have a family. She raised the minimum age to marry to 18 years old. Teresa Kachindamoto is a great mother and a great leader, daring to work against what has always been for the best. That takes strength, the strength of a mother. Candy Lightner is a great mother, saving countless lives in the United States and continues right now. Did you recognize her name, Candy Lightner? I think she's okay with the fact that you didn't know her name. She much prefers, not to drink and drive. Candy Lightner founded MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, an organization whose purpose is to get tougher laws passed to get drunk drivers off the road. In 1980, a hit-and-run drunk driver killed one of her 13-year-old twin daughters, Carrie. Carrie was walking to a church carnival. The driver had 3 prior convictions for drunk driving and had been arrested just 2 days earlier for a different hit and run. Having a few drinks and hitting the road in the 80s was just not a big deal. The legal limit was .15. Today is .8. But you can be charged if your blood alcohol level is anything above .0. Don't drink and drive is a common refrain now, as is designated driver. That is largely due to the work done by MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. You've learned a lot about some great mothers from long ago and some from right now. So let's see what you already know about mothers. Just for fun, I've got a little quiz for you. I'll ask a question and you answer out loud to your screen because it's just you and it's just me and this is just for fun. How many children do you think are born to U.S. mothers each year? Take a guess. 1.7 million, 2.7 million, or 3.7 million? What do you think? 3.7 million babies are born in the United States each year. Actually, that's a 2% drop from the year before. Not since 1986 has the U.S. seen so few babies born. Still, 3.7 million little ones. Now, you're all warmed up. I'm going to ask you a science question. Are you ready? Scientifically, does the moon cycle have any influence on births? Answer yes or no. In other words, are there more births when the moon is full? That sure is a common myth, isn't it? It's a wives' tale. As a matter of fact, all around the world, people repeat the same myth, that a full moon will pull on a woman's amniotic fluids like it does the tide and increase the chance of giving birth. On that day, the moon is at its fullest. But actually, no, it's not the moon. When the baby's ready, the baby's ready, no matter the moon. This next question will employ your guessing powers. Or maybe you know. What is the age of the oldest recorded mother in modern history? Say an age. The oldest verified mother to conceive naturally is Dawn Brooke of the UK. She conceived a son at the age of 59 years old, giving birth to a boy in 1997. No fertility drugs. She's been extremely private about this. I couldn't get a current picture of her or the boy that she named Harry. This picture is from 1980 with her first son, Nick. Dawn Brooke, you see, thought that her pregnancy symptoms after menopause, the cravings, the exhaustion, the body aches, were symptoms of cancer. She cut short a vacation here to this country to go home for medical testing, bracing herself for the test results. Instead of cancer, she was 16 weeks pregnant. A healthy 9-pound baby boy was born. Now that was a surprise. What her doctors discovered, it was the hormone replacement therapy she was using that may have caused her to ovulate after menopause. In the United States, between 1997 and 99, there were 539 births among women over the age of 50. One of them, more recently, my girlfriend, Liz. It was the year of her 50th birthday. We had a birthday party and a baby shower for her. I always knew she was special. I looked for her name as I searched the records, but since this was so recent, her name wasn't on the records yet, but it will be. By the way, with fertility treatments, records show that 194 mothers in the United States have given birth to babies at or over 55. Okay, let's just take a moment to get over that, shall we? Oh, keep your minds sharp. Here's the next question. Is Mother's Day celebrated only in the United States, or is Mother's Day celebrated all over the world? What do you think? All around the world. Which makes sense because there's mothers all over the world and people who love them. There's two more questions. This is another numbers question. How many mothers are there today in the U.S.? 5 million, 45 million, or 85 million? At the last census, there were about 85 million mothers. That's a lot of Mother's Day cards. After Christmas and Hanukkah, more people buy flowers and plants for their moms on Mother's Day than any other day of the year. Lastly, you may need to be seated for this one. My last question to you is, how many children have been delivered by one woman? Is it 21, 25, or 69? All right, this one is impossible to prove, but according to a local monastery report to the government, in Moscow between the years 1725 and 1765, Mrs. Vasilyev gave birth to, are you ready? 16 pairs of twins, 7 sets of triplets, and 4 sets of quadruplets all together. That's a grand total of 69 children. I found that over and over again in my research, recorded as history, and I'm reporting it to you, but As a mother of quadruplets myself, I don't believe it. I think Mr. Vasilyev may have had more than one wife, or there was a record keeper over there with a full sense of humor and an empty bottle of vodka. But that is what is recorded as the world's highest birth rate by one woman. Now, there's another theory presented by a very bright man, my husband, Chris, who thought perhaps it was a kind couple who took in children of unwed mothers in the area, claiming them as their own. What do you think? I'd love to know. I'd love an email. So how'd you do on our little test? That was fun. The score on your test is directly related to your fertility. Not really. Don't get worried. I'm teasing. Now, let's go back to learning about great mothers in history, because there's more to learn. I have 2 more mothers to tell you about. I wonder if you know their names. I'd like you to meet Vesta Stout, a mother with 2 sons serving in the U.S. Navy in the 1940s. Both of her sons were in her prayers every night, and every day she went to work at the Green River Ordnance Plant between Dixon and Amboy, Illinois. She felt she wanted to do her part in the war effort. She wanted to help. She worked inspecting and packing cartridges used to launch rifle grenades. They were packed 11 to a box. Those boxes were taped and waxed to make them water resistant. The boxes each had a tab of tape that was left loose. Pull it and the box would open. But the problem was that the paper was just too thin on that tab that was supposed to open the box, and it often just tore off. Vesta Stout imagined her sons and other sons clawing the boxes open under enemy fire. Lives were at risk. Her sons' lives were at risk. Vesta Stout came up with a solution and presented it to her supervisor. Fine, sure, honey, it's a good idea, but we've got a factory here and things are more complicated than you realize. So what is a person to do? Well, I'll tell you what a mother does. She wrote a letter to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt outlining the issue and telling him her idea about how to fix it with cloth-based waterproof tape. Here's part of the letter to the president. She says, "Now your son, my son, our neighbor's son must pull this tape off some way, perhaps with his teeth, or a knife if he's lucky enough to have one. 9 chances out of 10 he hasn't any." She went on to explain, "We can't let him down by giving him a box of cartridges that takes a minute or more to open." Vesta Stout drew her idea right there on the letter. Roosevelt sent Vesta Stout's letter to the War Production Board in Washington, D.C. Just a few weeks later, she received a letter that said her idea was of exceptional merit. The War Production Board asked Johnson & Johnson, who was making surgical adhesive tape for them at the time, to take on this project. For fabric, they used duck cotton fabric. And like a duck, it was waterproof. So they called it, yes, duct tape. Soldiers used it to repair just about everything. At first, the men called it 100-mile-an-hour tape. It was strong and waterproof, but duct tape was the name that stuck. Pleased and satisfied that she really made a difference and didn't take no for an answer, Vesta enjoyed every letter she received in the mail from every mother with joy. And then one day, in her mailbox was a letter from the President of the United States himself, thanking her for her idea. She also won the Chicago Tribune War Workers Award for her idea and for her persistence. Now, in recent years, duct tape has become so popular, people use it to make everything from wallets to automobile repair to prom dresses. Oh, yes, it's a thing. Hey, Vesta, what a mom. Our time is almost over. We've learned a lot about mothers, from recent moms to moms from long ago. Let's learn about one more before our time is up. This mom is not a celebrity, not well known. She's never had her name up in lights. She is not famous, but she had her son on her lap like mothers do. She stroked his hair and loved him to pieces. Her name is Debbie. Debbie Elnathan. Her son Rodham cried a lot when he was a baby. She didn't know why. When it came time to walk, he couldn't. Not in the "my baby can't walk till he can" way, in the "he can't walk" way. Her son Rodham had cerebral palsy. When she found out, she cried. She cried her eyes out for 2 weeks, she said, and then she got to work. For his development, she knew that he needed to be upright and move like he was walking. So she got on the floor and tried to help support him in ways that he could be mobile. She knew the importance of that kind of movement for his development, for his brain development. She thought there must be a better way. So she started experimenting, cutting blocks of wood and different materials, looking for a way to rest his feet on hers, and then worked on some way to support his body with a harness that could be strapped to her. Debbie Elnathan developed a system to give her son the experience of walking, with her son's feet strapped to hers and his torso strapped with a vest. He could be upright and feel like he was walking. He could experience happiness. Her dedication, born from the love of her own son, now helps children all over the world have the experience and the therapeutic benefit of walking. She designed this product called Upsy. Debbie Elnathan, looking for a way to help her own son, ended up helping children all over the world have a little happier childhood. There are so many great mothers from history and from today, but we only have so much time. We do have time for one more quiz question. All right, get your thinking cap back on. One more. We asked you about mothers with the most kids and mothers that are the oldest. Now, say, what do you think is the average age of a mother in the United States today? By what age, on average, does a woman have her first child? Do you think it's 22.5, 19.9, or 26.3? What do you think? Ta-da! 26.3. Did you get that one right? The age has gone up over time. In the last 45 years, the average age of a first-time mom has gone up 5 years, from 21 to 26 years old. I hope today that you learned something and had some fun. I'm here today to remind you that every mother is great. Even if you never flew around the world or broke records or invented something, you're great when you can love, if people know or not. When you're able to love, you're lovable. Today, I celebrate you and all you've done, whether you get noticed or not, whether someone said thank you or not. Today, I will thank you for all you have done. Seen or unseen, you matter. Mothers matter. Today, we've learned about some pretty great mothers. It's fun and interesting and inspiring. But remember, there's no way to be a perfect mother, but a zillion ways to be a good one. My name is Martina Mathisen. As a daughter myself to a wonderful mother, I wish you all the happiest Mother's Day.